Howdy folks, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am your host, the Mighty Bjorn, and today for you I have another Community Steel video featuring some more vehicles from the Sprocket community, showing off different designs from different members. But really quick, before I dive into today's Sprocket Community Steel video, I got a message from my sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. No, I'm just fucking with you. I wouldn't do anything like that. Anyway, folks, this is from... Oh, checked. I can't even say his name right. Object with a P instead of a B. And this is his Swedish Emil 1. And it is obviously, it is the heavy tank prototype based on the Emil. You know, where it's got the auto cannon and the whole 9 yards. And it's actually a quite nimble vehicle, surprisingly, for a vehicle of its weight. And his frontal armor is actually rather good. The gun is rather powerful. The gun depression of it is really leaves something to be desired. Now, that being said, the side armors, well, yeah, it's just there. But anyway, I'm going to show this off a little bit here, and it actually does not have the auto gun, even though it's got the auto cannon turret design. We don't have auto loaders yet in Sprocket. And I'm going to show off a little bit of the mobility here and the actual design itself. And even the turret traverse is actually rather good. Oh, got a lucky bounce in the stern pens or 4. Let's get another shot off here. And it really doesn't take, I think if I recall, it was like 8.5 seconds was the reload time. It's hard to see against the white backdrop. And it's, like I said, its mobility is actually rather good. As you can see, it's maneuvering around actually quite well. I mean, it's almost light tank level mobility in a heavy tank design. Anyway, let's move on to the next tank. And this tank is also based on a Swedish design. This is the FVX-001 by Verona. And it is inspired by the STRV 103, even though he says it's actually a French design, but we'll just go with it. And it is a late war tank with a pike nose, so it is a bit different. It actually does have a modeled pike nose that looks actually rather good. Not 100% sure though if I showed it here. And it's armed with a 120mm gun and has 214.2 folks, millimeters of penetration. And it's actually 44 tons. It actually maneuvers around very fast. It's got a decent reload too, for it being a 120mm main gun. I'm not sure how he got the reload speed so good with so much penetration on a 120mm main gun, but we'll let secrets be what they are. And you can actually see this vehicle's mobility is also rather good. I mean, it's almost race car level mobility here. I mean, it gets up and goes rather fast. It actually steers rather quickly. It's a real peppy design when it comes to mobility. Now the next vehicle is the King Tiger from Novercalis. And, well, it's a King Tiger. There's not really a whole lot I can say about it, but there's a couple things I do want to point out about it. It does have the 88mm gun. It's actually got the proper gun on the tank, and it does weigh 66 tons, which is a little heavier than the actual real King Tiger, but that's not a whole lot heavier. But the thing I want to point out the most here is the track skirts. He's actually got the actual legit track skirts, factory style track skirts on this King Tiger. And I want to say this is the only King Tiger that I'm aware of in Sprocket that actually has the actual proper designed track skirts. Even has the front properly designed with the rounded shape. So I have to tip my hat off to him for that. There's not a... If there is any additional ones out there that is designed, that has the track skirts designed or modeled, if you will, there's not very many of them, because a lot of the King Tigers that I can recall off of the top of my head pretty much were Cane Tigers that did not have the track skirts, which was, that was also a common feature as well. Some of them wouldn't have them at all. Some of them end up getting ripped off or being removed by the crew, whatever, so that way they could easily repair the tracks. But so there it is. Of course, I got stuck because I'm old and shit, but now I'm a Cane Tiger bush. The next vehicle here is a Soviet vehicle designed by German Train. Oh my God, German Train, who's in more episodes of Community Steel than I am. Yes, folks, I'm the star of the show. And this guy must be my co-star because he's always sending me some really cool, really interesting, really detailed stuff. But this one's got an interesting story. This is his Type 10 Sulban, and it's got a 171 millimeter. Well, it's actually a rocket launcher, not a gun, because this is actually inspired by one of my videos. I did a video a while ago for Armored Warfare talking about the IT-1, which was a tank destroyer designed by the Soviets during the early Cold War period when they were fussing around with mounting ATGMs on tank chassis. And this is one of those vehicles that they would have designed. It was the IT-1 is what he based this off of. Now, it's nowhere near as good as the IT-1, and honestly, I wouldn't consider it usable because essentially he had to use a gun to model the rocket, and basically it's a 171 millimeter main gun with a very piss poor reload time and almost no velocity and very little in the way of penetration. Actually, the thing's velocity is so bad that you gotta point this thing like way up in the air to get it to fly further than 50 meters. Actually, you're probably lucky if you break 50 meters if you're pointing the gun straight. Either ways, still a really cool, really detailed design from German Train. And besides of German Train, this is another vehicle I've actually been frothing at the bit to show you. This is Atomic Annie from German Train, and it is actually not a self-propelled artillery piece. See, Atomic Annie was a huge ass I believe it was a 175 millimeter howitzer, and it was put on a trailer chassis. And the trailer chassis was hauled around by 2 trailer trucks, which actually what you see here is one of those trucks. And I just fired it. And it's got a 178 second reload. Alright, let's move on to the next vehicle. I just wanted to show you that it fired. And this is actually the truck, the second truck necessary for Atomic Annie. Now, Atomic Annie is not one of those vehicles I would actually download. But I did want to show it here because, honestly, this is an honest-to-God work of art because he actually properly designed and recreated Atomic Annie. And Atomic Annie was an American artillery piece that was designed during the mid-Cold War era, mid-Cold War period, and it had a ridiculously far range for its time. It was something like 22 miles maximum range during a time when artillery only had a roughly 12 to 14 mile range. And it was so big and so heavy that it had to be hauled around by 2 cargo trucks, 2 very large heavy-duty trucks. The only other way to move this thing was to load it onto a train with a crane and move it by train. There was only 2 ways to move it. And there's not too many of these left in the world. There was only ever a dozen of them made, and there's only like 3 or 4 of them left, and only like 2 of them actually still has their cargo trucks. They're towing trailers, or sorry, towing trucks, if you will. Now, I did a piss poor job here of lining it up, but I wanted to show you what it would actually look like. You would have 1 truck facing one way, 1 truck facing the other way, and they would actually work together to move this monstrosity around. But it's a very cool recreation. Anyway, folks, so there it is. That's this episode of Community Steel featuring Atomic Annie Probably one of the, not the world's largest artillery pieces, but probably one of the world's largest artillery pieces that can't be moved around by, or that doesn't, oh God, I can't even explain it, but essentially it can be moved around by truck. Anything bigger would only be able to be moved around by train. Anyway, folks, thank you very much for tuning in. Hopefully you all enjoyed this episode of Community Steel, and have yourself a wonderful day.